Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are sinking our teeth into one of the most famous and, let's be honest, one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of psychology, Carl Jung's psychological types. Now, I know you've heard of introverts and extroverts, we all have, but that is just scratching the surface. It's the tip of the iceberg of what is a really deep and powerful tool for understanding the human mind. But before we go any further, let's just hear from the man himself. Because when popular psychology got a hold of his work and started turning it into these neat little boxes to put people in, Jung he was not happy about it. He said that just using his work to stick labels on people was nothing more than a childish parlor game. So if he thought it was a silly game, what was the real point? You have to remember, Jung was a psychotherapist. He was in the trenches, working with real people every single day. And his theories weren't born in some ivory tower. They came from the messy, chaotic reality of human personalities clashing. He just felt this deep, urgent need for some kind of compass, a way to navigate the constant conflicts that come from us all being so different. And that leads us to the big question, the one that really drove him. Why? Why can two people look at the exact same situation and walk away with completely opposite takeaways? Why do our relationships, our friendships, even global politics so often just crumble into misunderstanding and conflict? Jung was convinced the answer was buried deep in our fundamental psychological wiring. So to start, Jung saw two basic attitudes, two primary ways our psychic energy, what he called libido, naturally flows. And this is not about being shy versus being the life of the party. It's much deeper. It's all about where your energy is fundamentally directed. First up, you've got the extroverted attitude. For an extrovert, that psychic energy is flowing outward, towards the object. And when Jung says the object, he just means the external world, other people, things, events, what's happening out there. Their whole orientation is guided by what's outside of them. And then you've got the complete flip side, the introverted attitude. Here, that same energy, the libido, moves inward. It pulls away from the external object and flows into the inner world, the world of ideas, reflections, and images. For the introvert, it's the subject, the self, that's the really decisive factor. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Jung borrowed this beautiful analogy from the poet Goethe. He compared this flow of energy to the rhythm of a beating heart. Think about it. Extroversion is like diastole. That's the expansion of the heart when it opens up to fill with blood, reaching out into the world. And introversion is like systole, the contraction, pulling all that energy inward to focus, to recharge. It's a vital, constant rhythm, and here's the key. We all have both. It's just the one that dominates that shapes our type. And for Jung, this wasn't some 20th century discovery. Not at all. He looked back and saw this same fundamental opposition, this same tug of war, playing out again and again and again, all throughout human history. It just wore different masks in different eras. Let's take an early example from the Church Fathers. You have Tertullian. He was a brilliant thinker, a logician, but to fully embrace his faith, he felt he had to perform what he called the sacrificium intellectus, a sacrifice of his intellect. He famously said, "I believe because it is absurd." His enemy was external, intellectual knowledge. Now contrast that with Origen. He was a man of the world, focused on the object. His great struggle was with his sensual connection to that world. So he performed the sacrificium folly. He literally castrated himself to sever that tie. You see, each man was forced to sacrifice his most developed, most natural function. Okay, now let's fast forward a few centuries to medieval philosophy. We see the exact same conflict. You have the nominalists, who had the extroverted view. For them, big, universal concepts like beauty or goodness, they're just names, a flatus vocis, which literally means a puff of air. The only thing that's real is the specific, individual, concrete thing you can see and touch. But the realists, they took the introverted position. They said, no, that individual thing is just a passing shadow. The true reality is the eternal, unchanging idea of beauty itself. It's the same fight, the concrete object versus the abstract idea. Okay, so we've got our two main attitudes, introversion and extroversion. But Jung knew that picture was still a little blurry. We don't just face inward or outward. We experience the world through different lenses, or what he called the four functions. He grouped them into two pairs. First, you have the rational, or judging functions. That's thinking, which is always trying to connect ideas to reach a conclusion. It asks, is this logical, true, or false? And its opposite is feeling, which establishes the value of things. It asks, is this good or bad? Do I accept it or reject it? Then you have the irrational or perceiving functions. There's sensation, which tells you that something is. It's the raw data from your five senses. And its opposite is intuition, which perceives possibilities, reading between the lines, seeing the unconscious background of things. Now, here's the kicker. This is maybe the most crucial part of the whole theory. We don't use all four of these functions equally. Not even close. We specialize. One function becomes our go-to, our dominant tool that we hone and develop our entire lives. But, and this is a big but, it always comes at a price. The direct opposite of our dominant function, so thinking versus feeling or sensation versus intuition, it gets pushed into the shadows. It becomes what Jung called the inferior function, and it stays largely unconscious and, well, pretty clumsy. And that brings us all the way back to the real goal of Jung's psychology. See, it was never, ever about just finding out your four-letter code and calling it a day. It was about using that knowledge to finally understand the opposites churning around inside you and then beginning the hard work of making yourself whole. So how do you do that? Jung called the process the transcendent function. The goal isn't for your conscious, dominant side to beat your unconscious, inferior side into submission. No way. The goal is to hold the tension between them, to stand in that uncomfortable middle ground until something entirely new is born from the conflict, a new synthesis, a uniting symbol that rises above both sides. This is the key. This is the whole point. The goal is not to get rid of your opposite, but to integrate it. So if you are a powerful thinking type, your life's work isn't to become an even better thinker. Your real path to growth is to learn to listen to that quiet, undeveloped, sometimes messy voice of feeling. Real development, what Jung called individuation, always comes through integrating your weakest, most neglected part. To explain this, Jung often looked to Eastern philosophy. He saw this exact idea in the concept of the Tao, the middle way. The Tao, he said, is the path that is the middle road between the opposites, freed from them and yet uniting them in itself. It's not about choosing a side. It's about finding the path that can hold both. It's the path to wholeness. So the next time you find yourself in a heated argument with someone who just seems like your polar opposite, remember this. That conflict isn't just happening out there between the two of you. That person who drives you absolutely crazy might just be a mirror, reflecting back the undeveloped, unacknowledged part of yourself. And that leaves us with the real question, doesn't it? Your opposite isn't just in other people. It's already inside of you. So what happens when you finally start to listen?